Oh, hello, welcome back to the channel and welcome to my review of the Innova KC Pro Rock. We're going to throw it, we're going to show it next to other discs, we're going to talk about the design, we're going to talk about where it sits in the modern game compared to other mid-ranges, and all kinds of other stuff. So settle in, stay tuned, subscribe if you're not, if you like the content, to stick around for future videos, and let's get into the review of the Rock. Okay, classic disc, and as much as I kind of want to sit here and ramble to you guys about my history with this disc and the early days in disc golf and kind of reminisce a little bit, I'm also going to try to avoid putting too much of that in this video because I also want to just kind of represent this as any other disc. You know, this is one that I thought really needed to be in the playlist. My buddy Anthony Davis was kind enough to hook us up with this one to test and review and throw and all that stuff, so I appreciate that. And then I can put this into the playlist for you guys to reference for years to come to learn more about this disc if you're interested. Before we get too far into the video, big shout out to my retail sponsor, Infinite Discs. You can use my code DGNERD at checkout to get yourself a discount at infinitediscs.com, and you will also help to support the channel in that way. If you see this video in the future, the coupon code may no longer be active, but just reach out to me in the comments or anywhere else, and I will let you guys know about any current coupon codes that are available. But first, a little bit of a quick story about my personal experience with the KC Pro Rock, since it's one of the first mid-ranges I had the chance to try. Over a decade ago now, I was in Myrtle Beach on vacation. I was actually getting married at the time, and me and my dad played a small ball golf course that had a little pitch and putt par 3 course, and they had baskets and golf tees, you know, so it was like a combined facility. And we played at night under the lights, which was pretty cool and something I would love to be able to do now. But at that place, they had like a little box of tester discs and rental discs that you could borrow for a couple of bucks to use for your round or whatever it was. So my dad grabbed a few, and one of them was a KC Pro Rock. It was, I believe it was 11 time, which would be evidenced by, I would say, Kevin, sorry, Kenny. It would say Ken Climo, 11 time, 11X PDGA World Champion. So it was white with a rainbow stamp, and we threw it that night, and I remember liking it quite a bit, but I had to give it back since it was a rental. And then when I got home, I was able to find one there to use for a little while. You know, I'm not sure exactly how long I had that disc or what even happened to it. I must have traded it or sold it off at some point, and I really couldn't tell you what I switched to. I can't quite remember. The only other mid-ranges I had ever tried at that point were a DX Coyote from Innova and a Z Comet, old Z Comet that I would love to still have that I lost so long ago. And I did really like it though. I liked the stiff plastic. I liked the bead. I've always liked that beaded feel for the mid-range, but for whatever reason, it's not a disc that ever really had any kind of long-term time in my bag. You know, KC Pro Rock flight numbers are 4, 4, 0, and 3. Now, I think that's kind of a little bit of an old school 3 in fade there. I think all of the discs that we see on the market now with a 3 for fade, things like the Latitude 64 Anchor, the Discmania Method, both of those are more overstable for sure, and we're gonna do some side-by-side comparisons in a little bit here, so stay tuned for that. But I would say 4402 would make more sense for the Rock. Now, one of the things about the KC Pro Rock that I think is kind of foundational to this disc and the understanding of how to utilize this mold as a disc golfer is that this plastic breaks in quickly. This one, you know, was mostly new when we started testing it for review, and you can see it's got like a decent amount of wear on it, and it started to become more understable already. So one of the most foundational aspects of using this disc is how well it layers. If you have a brand new KC Pro or DX Rock, it's going to be pretty stable. You can throw it pretty flat. It's going to fly pretty straight, have a little bit of fade at the end of the flight, and then as it starts to break in, you're going to see more and more natural turn. Now you can throw it on hyzer flips. Now you can get it to start to late turn as it gets really beat up. So the way this thing flies and the way I'm going to demonstrate it later on in this video is really just a snapshot in time of the lifespan of this disc. Now, of course, all discs are the same way, and that's a foundational thing across disc golf and across disc golf disc reviews, 100%. But this disc in particular is so well known for layering and being utilized in that way by professional players. Years ago, that was what you saw. You know, if you were on Team Innova, you'd have rocks in the bag and you'd have a few of them. You'd have a fresh one and you'd have have a really beat up one for turnovers and hyzer flips, and you'd have a couple in the middle as well. So as it starts to wear, it's going to change considerably, and that's one of the beautiful things about the Rock. You can have a nice, fresh, stable one, you can have an extremely flippy one, and all the little nuances in between, and it's faster to get there than if you were trying to use all Champion Rock 3s and break those in. I hope you guys understand what I'm saying there, and we can move on to a closer look at the classic beaded mid-range profile of the Rock. Now this one does have some dome to it for sure, and it will catch some air because of that, which I think is nice, but it's not necessarily my favorite feel. I kind of like this edge to be a little bit flatter and a little bit more squared off in my discs. That just feels a little better in my hand, but it's not a deal breaker. Also, the plastic not overly grippy. This is the kind of stuff that I like to lick my thumb, and I think I can dig into it a little bit better, and it feels a little better for me. But it's not a huge deal breaker, and it's good plastic for wetter weather. If it's a little rainy, it's a little easier to get a grip on this than some of the more premium stuff. Let's put it next to some other options, as I always like to do. First of all, the Black Zombie shotgun, one I tested recently, 5502, and these were tested similarly at a similar time, and they seem to fly quite similar as well, even though they have different shape there. As you can see, the Black Zombie shotgun is big, kind of chunky rim there, and you can see the different indentation there, and the bead is much more it's much more up here. There's a scoop out from the outside of this up to the bead, and the bead protrudes more as well compared to this shotgun. Solid mold though. Then we have the Evolution Method from Discmania. Pretty sweet die on this one. This is one of my conditioner dies, and it rivals just about any other die that I've done. I really like the way this one came out. 5503 are the flight numbers on this one. So once again, this is definitely a more overstable disc in my opinion, for sure. Fresh, and should continue to be for a long period of time. But the Method is another beaded mid-range, as you can see there. Method, also great disc. Latitude 64 produced Discmania disc. Great glide with that nice overstability. Really nice thrower. Then probably the beaded mid-range that I have the most experience with, and this is one of the old first run from 2017 of the Disc Golf Nerd discs. Shout out to anybody who still has one of these laying around. This might be the last one I have. I maybe have like one more somewhere. And this one is 5403, and definitely more overstable than a KC Pro Rock. You can see it's like a similar vibes, but it's just like enlarged. Hopefully you can see what I'm saying there. Like this one's just a little bit bigger bead. The rim protrudes out a little bit more. Just kind of a little bit more of a beefier feel to it. Definitely translates in terms of the flight. And last but not least, straight out of my collector stock here, we have the Champion Protostar Rock 3. This is one that I have not really thrown, but side by side you'll see the Rock 3 is way flatter. See how much flatter that is on the top compared to the KC Pro Rock. Also, you can see that the bead looks to be a little bit bigger on the Rock 3 as well. A little bit tricky, but you guys can hopefully get a pretty good view of that. And in general, these Champion Rock 3s, I would say, are start off a little more stable than a KC Rock as well. So when I first started playing, the big question was, are you a rock guy or are you a buzz guy? Those were the two that really butted heads and were vying for the #1 disc golf mid-range on the market. And I would say that's probably still the case. I mean, you can make the argument for a lot of other discs. I think the Fuse is arguably one of the best mid-ranges in disc golf. Obviously, I love the Gobi, but that's kind of more of my personal opinion. And there's other great discs out there. The MX3 from Prodigy is probably my favorite mid-range from them, and then we have great other Innova discs like the Mako 3, and there's so many other options than there were back in the days of the Buzz versus Rock. But all these years later, if I had to pick one or the other, I kind of like the Rock in some ways. I just like that beaded feel. I like how easy it is to break them in. The Buzz is also phenomenal, and it's a coin toss. They're both discs that could go into any player's bag and get used with no issue, but Yeah, it's a tough one. Let me know in the comments down below. Rock or Buzz? Which one do you like better? And which modern mid-range do you think might be even better than both of those? Let us know in the comments, and we can be part of a little bit of discussion down there. And I'll let you guys know what I think about your picks. Okay. So we have me throwing it, we have James throwing it, we have Andy throwing it, I believe, and we also have a couple of shots of Ricky Wysocki throwing this thing. Shout out to Disc Golf Donkeys on Instagram. He is Ricky's buddy, had a couple of clips that he had filmed of Ricky throwing this disc. I reached out to him, and he was kind enough to send him over to me, so definitely go follow him on Instagram. But you'll see that even though this disc is a classic disc that's been around for so long, you're still seeing the top player in the world, Ricky Wysocki, utilizing a KC Pro Rock, one of the older ones, right now on the Disc Golf Pro Tour, competing at the highest level. And you'll see Ricky's can get him to hold hyzer depending on the angle, and he can get to flip and hold a long turnover as well, and all the nuances in between. So I wanted to throw in a little bit of what it looks like with a really high level pro and one of the top guys in the world, you know, still carrying the torch for the Rock out there. Philo Brathwaite's the only other guy that really comes to mind that I still think of as a rock thrower, you know, a real hardcore rock guy. But I think Philo is more of a DX rock thrower than KC. I could be wrong, but I think that's correct. So let's talk about the flight of this thing. All that being said, it's a good flyer, and it's just one of those discs that works super well right off the shelf and continues to work really well as it breaks in, as we talked about. I think that's the main kind of attribute of the KC Rock in general, is how well they layer and how you can cover so many different lines and shot shapes using one mold that all feels the same in the hand, that has that consistent feel, consistent grip, consistent feel when it releases from your hand. And then the wear on the disc can produce so many different flights. And then if you wanted to, you could throw in a Rock 3, a Champion Rock 3, a Luster Rock 3 to have the, you know, stability, and then also have that stability hang on for a while with the increased durability of that plastic. The KC Pro is just tailor-made to layer and beat up to different levels. So if you're going to throw the KC Rock or the DX Rock, you're probably going to want to buy them in pairs at least. Buy 2, 3 at a time, and then you can kind of cycle them in as needed. But as one gets too beat up, you put a fresh one in, and they all kind of move down the line. That's an old school way of building your bag that we don't see quite as much with brand new players getting into the game. You want to have a lot of molds, and you want to have all premium plastics, etc. Don't sleep on these more baseline plastics. They fly awesome, and it's much, much easier and faster to get them broken in. So talking about the flight of the Rock in terms of that is a little bit tricky, but ultimately it's extremely neutral, straight flying in general. It's rare you find a Rock that really fades super hard at the end of the flight, especially if it has any kind of wear on it. And what I think they're really kind of best at is somewhere in the middle, where they're not super flippy, but they start to break in enough that you can throw them on hyzer and they'll flip up laser straight and just hold. This one's almost there. Like, you can start it on a little hyzer and it'll tick up and just fly on a laser straight down the line. Holds turns, holds hyzers, very neutral flyer. I wish I could do more to kind of represent the mold overall, because there's been a million different iterations of the Rock in general, but this is just a snapshot in time of this particular KC Pro Rock, and a little bit of history and philosophy about the disc that I thought you guys might find interesting. So that's all I got for you on this review. The Rock is an extremely straight flying disc, fresh off the shelf. It's stable enough that you can throw it flat and it will hold flat and straight with a little bit of fade at the end of the flight. But especially in KC and DX plastic, it's going to start to break in relatively soon, and you're going to start seeing it ride a little bit more, stand up a little easier, a little less fade over time, and then more and more natural turn, high speed turn will come into the disc as it starts to get really, really beat up. But it's still super functional, because now you can throw it on that hyzer and let it flip up and maybe even work over and just fade out to the right. So you can get so many different flights one of the most accurate and controllable discs on the market. The KC Pro Rock, absolute classic. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you to all of my fans, viewers, subscribers, the Disc Golf Nerd Patreon support team. If you want to support the channel, that's one really easy way that you can do it. That really, really helps me out. Go check me out on Patreon, have your name listed in the credits of all the videos. Big shout out to Infinite Discs for their continued support. You can use my code DGNERD at checkout, save some money, and help support the channel, because we'll get a little chunk of that will come back to the channel to help us out. If you see this video in the future and that coupon code is no longer active, just leave a comment or reach out to me via email or Instagram, and I can let you know of all current coupon codes that are still active. Also, you can use my Team Upper Park Disc Golf code for a brand new bag on upperparkdiscgolf.com, and you can use that code as DiscGolfNerd10 for 10% off a Rebel, a Shift, a Pinch, any of the great bags that they have available on the website. So thank you all for your continued support, and I will talk to you later. Cheers.